Hello and welcome to our Groundplan Super User Series. My name is Cazz, I'm the trainer here at Groundplan, and today I will be taking you through the Groundplan and SimPRO integration. We have a mixture of new and long-term Groundplan users in today's webinar, so we will be covering a wide range of topics. The Groundplan SimPRO integration is designed to streamline your workflow and save you time. You can design and measure plans, link to catalog items, pre-builds, one-off items, and then push these measurements as totals into SimPRO and to a quote, and then push revised totals into the same SimPRO quote. Those of you who have not set up your API key, you will need to refresh your SimPRO and Groundplan connection every 7 days. This is for security reasons. This is a nice 3-click refresh, so you just go up to the SimPRO logo, click onto reconnect, and then you'd click on to authorize. As you see, this would now reconnect my SimPRO for another 7 days. Now, 3 clicks doesn't sound like it's all that much, but when you look at the practicalities here, you might be in the middle of trying to push a project across to a quote in SimPRO. You might be trying to select a catalog item or pre-build against a measurement. And if you really look at it, 3 clicks every 7 days over what, say, 3 or 4 year period is actually a long amount of time that you could probably use better elsewhere. So to get this time back, you can simply set up an API key. To be able to set up an API key, you will need to be an administrator in your Groundplan account and have the correct SimPRO permissions. You should be logged into SimPRO to start with, and then coming across to Groundplan, we'd head up to this SimPRO button, then go down to Setup, where you're just going to click the Setup API key. You can click to automatically pre-fill the information, which opens up your SimPRO, and we can go down to here and click Create. The next point here, we need to click the download key. Then heading back onto Groundplan, you can either click to choose that file from your downloads, or we can simply drag and drop this over the choose file. Anyone with a multi-company, you will need to select which companies you want to be able to push quotes through to from Groundplan. So just add a couple in here. And when you're happy, select your default company. So that's the one that you want to appear every time you're pushing your quote through, but obviously this can be changed. When we're ready, we're going to click the Save and Sync. All of those steps for setting up the API key, these are available in our user guide. So you do just need to head to Help and the user guide to find those steps. We do obviously have images and GIFs against all of our user articles. Our API key is now set up, so we don't have to refresh the connection every 7 days. Instead, what Groundplan will do is it will refresh your data every 7 days. So if you're going through and adding new pre-build groups, new catalog groups, new labor rates, anything like that that you want to measure with straight away in Groundplan, you'd come up here, obviously into SimPRO and set up again. You can either use the refresh wheel on each of the individual groups, or to refresh all of your data, you can come up here and use the company's refresh wheel instead. This is our Groundplan setup. So under here, you can create project statuses, project labels, and takeoff labels for better visualization and filtering within Groundplan. This is all Groundplan only information. So none of this is going to get pushed through to SimPRO when you're pushing projects into quotes. What I find is quite popular amongst many of my customers is to have a status here of sent to SimPRO. So when you're looking at all of your Groundplan projects, you can easily see which of your projects have been sent to SimPRO and therefore are a quote. This is fantastic for when you're speaking to your customers or your builders, or just for really what work you need to be looking at next. Anyone who is using multi-company, especially those of you who are not sharing catalogs, I would completely encourage you guys to set up project labels and takeoff labels with the names of each of the companies that you're pushing projects into SimPRO in as quotes. For any other information or further information on our setup, so things like adding symbols or users in Groundplan, I would encourage you to see our Groundplan Super User Webinar 1, where we do go through the whole of this page together. Another fantastic time saver within Groundplan is our Takeoff Templates. So Takeoff Templates are a collection of measurements where you can set your style icons. You can have these pre-linked to pre-builds, catalog items, or even one-off items. But these really are measurements that you're going to regularly use on projects. Now on Monday, we had a big release. Due to customer feedback, we brought out one of our most requested features, which is the ability to assign cost centers to items within your Takeoff templates. So you no longer will have to set these at project level. These can already be set up in your templates. So for anyone that wants to make use of this feature and start assigning cost center to items in their original templates that are already set up, you do need to come in here into your Takeoff template page. I'm just going to use my filter here by my label of SimPRO so I can see all of my SimPRO templates. I'm going to come down here to my power and communications. Once inside my template, here are all of my measurements with all of my style options preset for me, and I've got my labels here for easy filtering. Underneath this SimPRO tab, here are all of the items that I have assigned to these measurements. Anytime you see this box here, so this square with an arrow pointing out of it, this denotes that this is a SimPRO Prebuild or a SimPRO Catalog item. And you'll see that I can, by clicking on this here, it actually takes me straight through to this prebuild in SimPRO. These items here are one-off items as they do not have this box next to them. So this is really easy for you to spot when something is a one-off item, either within a template or within a project. Currently, you'll see that all of my cost centers here are set to none. So this means when I add this template onto a project, all of these items will be assigned to the default cost center on that project, which I can obviously update before I push this through to my SimPRO quote. So to preset these item cost centers, I need to select the items that I want to have against a cost center. So if your template was all going to one cost center, say lighting, you could obviously come down here and select all. In my case, my items were all going across to different cost centers. So I'm just going to click along the line to select the items that I want in my first cost center. And this is going to be for my roughing cost center. Once I'm happy with my item selection, I'm just going to head down to set cost center 2 and go up to here to roughing, and you'll see these are all now showing the cost center of roughing. You'll see down here all of my items to be quoted, they're all like nicely grouped together. So I can simply click, hold and drag to select all of those items in one hit. Once again, clicking on set cost center 2 and going up to outsourced. Lastly, I'm just going to set my fit off cost center. You'll see here that I'm not at one stage going to use the tick box. I really can just tick along anywhere on that line to select these items just for easier selection. Now that I'm happy with my cost center selection, I'm just going to come up here to my arrow, and this will take me back to my Takeoff template lists. If I had any additional templates that I wanted to update the cost centers on, I could just click into these to be able to do that. So when I come up here and create a new project, you'll see my cost center is set to none. If I had a default cost center for my project, let's just go and select commercial. I can set this here. You'll see here is my default company that I set up in my setup. But if I did want to change this to my other company, I can simply click to select the company. And this is obviously where I want to push this project into SimPRO in as a quote. When I'm happy with these selections, I'm going to click the green Create button. Under my Plans tab, when I drag and drop my plans, I can actually review which plans that I want to bring into Groundplan. Obviously, so these are going to be the plans that I want to mark up. So by clicking the Review button, you'll see it looks a lot like when you're going to print and you want to choose your selected pages for printing. So I could say, okay, I want to bring in pages 2, 3, and then 4 to 5. Oh, clicking the box helps. 2, 3, and then 4 to 5. Okay, and then when I'm happy with my selection, I'm going to click that blue Upload button. Whilst those are uploading, I'm just going to head back to my Groundplan project overview. So anything here, this is all Groundplan information. So I'm looking at my project details here, any tasks within my to-do list, any attachments, and also any important dates for those of you who might add your due date in here. This is all Groundplan only information. You can add a description and client in here, but it's not going to push through to SimPRO. Our SimPRO client, we're going to add later in the piece. And anyone that's looking for a faster way to populate their quote descriptions in SimPRO, I would encourage you to have a look into SimPRO scripts. Now that our plans are all uploaded, we're just going to head back to that Plans tab. And I'm just going to click to open the first plan that I want to do my markups on. So to design or to start a takeoff in Groundplan, I need to first add a stage. My stages are going to become sections within SimPRO. So I encourage everybody to set up their stages as they would set up their sections within their SimPRO projects. So this might be building 1, level 1, excavation, internal painting, or in our case, we're going to go with lighting. If I add in a stage description, this is going to push through to SimPRO as a section description for me. At this point, I would normally select my Takeoff template to populate my stage with measurements. However, for this part of the webinar, we're going to just start with a blank stage. Now I'm working here off a commercial electrical plan, so I need to give it a good old zoom in to see what all of my elements are called. I'm using my mouse wheel, but for anyone who maybe doesn't have a mouse wheel, we do have those zoom in buttons here on the right hand side. So to start off, I'm going to start populating my measurements. So let's look at my 1R. So I'm going to add a count. So when I'm adding any measurements into Groundplan, so if whether I want to measure an area, a length, or a count, I can choose whether I'm going to be measuring one of my SimPRO Prebuilds, a SimPRO catalog item, or in this case, a one-off item. As this is a lighting fitting called a 1R, we have a rough idea of what the fitting is, but it may well change. Whenever I'm creating one-off items here, I can choose whether this item is going to be an inventory item. If I tick that box, it's exactly the same as when you tick the box inside a SimPRO one-off item. So meaning that this is then going to show up on things like such as my supplier quote. I've been given a rough cost here for this item, so I'm going to pop that in here of $50. And you'll see here that I can then obviously put my markup on there and get my unit price. So all of this information is going to go through and populate inside my SimPRO quote. Down here, I'm just going to select the symbol and make sure I'm happy with my color before I create this measurement. Now my count's been created, I just need to click to count. So I'm just going to go around my plan, clicking all of my R1s. If I need to navigate around the plan, instead of zooming out again, I'm going to click, hold and drag, and then continue clicking to count. You'll see up here on the right hand side, I've got a running total of all of my counts for this measurement. If I was to put a count in the wrong place, I would simply hold the control key on my keyboard, command if you're on a Mac, and click to remove that, and then you'll see I'm back to the correct count. So next up, I'm going to be adding in what is noted on the plan here as a 2E. Now I happen to know that this 2E is actually an LED emergency light, otherwise known as a SPIT, which I have set up in my SimPRO Prebuilds. So I'm going to select here to add this particular count as a SimPRO Prebuild. I can refine my search here by using groups. I could use subgroups, but I know that this is an inner subgroup. But once I've obviously done my filters, I do still need to put at least 3 characters into my search bar for my search results to come up. So this is the pre-build I want to select. So I'm just going to click to select this. Once again, going into my symbols and choose the correct symbol for my takeoff and click the create button. So I've added in my spitties here. Now, one thing you'll see is now underneath my stage, which would also come through on my legend, is actually the pre-build name. Whereas for the case of my legend and, for anyone that's going to be maybe checking over what I've done, it's probably going to be easier to have this named the same as it is named on the plan. So hovering over this measurement, I'm going to use my menu button here and go down to the rename function. I'm just going to pop 2E in here. You can now see here that my measurement is now called 2E. So this is only in Groundplan. Okay, so under my stage, on my worksheet, whereas when I come to my SimPRO tab, you'll see here is my pre-build waiting to be pushed through. So when I push this through to SimPRO, it is still going to be my pre-build name that is going to be showing up on my quote. Now, if I wanted to add in the other items from a takeoff template to an existing stage, I'm just going to come up here to Actions and click Apply Template, choose my commercial lighting template. Now, when I'm applying any template onto a stage in Groundplan, I can choose which measurements I want to come through. So I've already got my 1R in there, I've already got my spitty in there. Down here, these 3 items I don't need to bring in, so I'm just going to click, hold and drag to unselect them. And when I'm happy with my measurement selection, I'm just going to apply that template. Now the template's in here, I can just go in and just, click through to add in my measurements, obviously that are already associated things like catalog items, pre-builds and one-off items. Once I'd finished my markup on these plans, I'd come up here and mark my plan as complete. The reason for doing this is that when you're doing things like takeoffs and design, very often you have to go out the project or someone else might be working with you, especially if it's a larger project, you might have 2 or 3 of you doing markups. Just by marking those plans as complete, it's really easy for you to see where you're at with the project and what plans are next to markup. Coming in here, this is actually my first floor lighting layout. We've obviously just done our ground floor. Now I've got a couple of options here when I'm looking at what I'm going to do with my stages. So if in my SimPRO quote, I had one section called lighting, and I wanted all of my lighting totals in the one section, I would come across here and choose link from the worksheet. I click on that now, I can choose my stage of lighting, click add. See here, obviously I can add in a couple of these lights. I can then add my 2Es in here as well. Okay, and what you'll see here is I'm getting a plan total as well as a project total, but everything's just under the one stage of lighting. Now, if in my SimPRO project, I've actually got it set up that my sections are showing as ground floor lighting and first floor lighting, to achieve that, I would need to add a separate stage in here. So I can come here and click add stage, select a new stage. Let's just put first floor lighting. Now here I can either choose to apply the takeoff template and unselect all the things that are incorrect again, or I can use the copy from stage option. So when I'm copying from the stage, this is just going to show me the measurements in my stage of lighting. I can see here that all of my light fittings on the first floor are just 1S, so I can still unselect my 1R, and then when I'm happy, I can click create. So if I go for my 2E here, I'm just going to come up here to settings and just change the color so that when I'm adding this measurement onto the plan, you can clearly see that this is a separate measurement in its own right. Okay, so you'll see here, here's my blue 2E, and you'll see that down here on my first floor lighting, I've got two 2Es here, and this has not affected my measurement up here at all. And obviously because they're different colors for the same measurement, they're clearly different items. If we head back up to settings and then down to parts, we can see that as I've copied the measurement, I've got the same pre-build assigned to that 2E that I set up in the first stage. If I want to go through to my next plan, I'm going to use my navigation buttons here on the bottom right. If your navigation arrows aren't on the bottom right, they will probably be over here. Commonly, this is because your screen is zoomed in, or maybe you're using Groundplan on a tablet or a touchscreen device, or just on a smaller screen. But if you can't see those navigation arrows on the right-hand side, just head over there to the left and they should be there for you. Now, the plan I'm on here, this is my power and communications layout. So as this is a new section in SimPRO, I would add this as a new stage. Coming in here, I'm going to apply my takeoff template. Now, because I've got quite a few templates, I'm just going to come here again and filter by my label of SimPRO. And here's this power and comms template that we looked at earlier. I'm happy that all of these measurements are going to be used on this project, so I'm just going to click create. Now that I've added in my templates, I can just go through and just click a couple of these parts and just add them into my plans, just to do a couple of counts along here. Now, as I'm going through and looking at my parts, I can see that I'm missing my WAP. So I just come up here and click plus count. Now, when I'm looking at my power and communications, the way that I have this set up in my SimPRO quote, or I want this to be set up in my SimPRO quote rather, is I want a section of power and comms, but inside that section, I want 3 cost centers. One is going to be rough in, one is fit off, and the other one is outsourced. So for this reason, the way that I've set up my pre-builds in SimPRO is for my WAP, I actually have a pre-build for the rough in and a pre-build for the fit off. So coming in here again, I'm just going to use my subgroups. So let's go power and comms, group of rough in, WAP. So here's the pre-build I'm looking for. So I'm going to select that pre-build, come in here and select the correct symbol and color. At this point, because I know that I want to be looking at counting my rough in and my fit off in this measurement, I'm actually going to come down here to create and add more parts. So this is our parts and labor. So under here, I'm going to go to plus part and select a SimPRO Prebuild. You'll see that Groundplan has remembered my subgroups and groups that I've selected previously. So here under my level 2 subgroup, I'm just going to select fit off and then look for my WAP again. Instead of going along the measurement name to rename this time, I'm just going to come up here, just get rid of my part number here so that my legend just shows my WAP. And when I'm happy with all of this, I'm going to go back to my plan. If I now select my WAP, I'm just going to click to count these. So you'll see on my stage and obviously therefore on my legend, this is obviously only showing as one line item. If we click across to the SimPRO tab and we jump down to our stage of power and comms, you can see here, here's my rough in and here's my fit off pre-build, and they've each got that count of 3 against them. So next on this plan, the next thing I really want to mark up here is going to be my cable tray. So this is my ground floor plan. I also have a first floor lighting plan. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to compare my ground floor plan with my first floor plan. So I actually want to overlay my plans together just to make sure that this cable tray is still correct and there haven't been any major changes on the first floor plan that would cause me to want to mark this up differently. So to do this, I'm going to head up here to our compare button. I'm going to select compare with another plan, select my first floor plan. If these weren't in the right orientation, I could obviously rotate these around. And when happy, I'm going to click the compare plans button. So what you'll see here is that everything on my current plan is in blue and everything on the first floor plan is going to be in red. Now we can see these aren't very well lined up because my staircases aren't aligned. So I'm going to come up here and click the align button. See what I'm moving around is actually the plan that I'm comparing it with is the one that's moving around. So I know that anything in black is the same. So once my stairs are black, I know that these plans are aligned. So I can unclick the align button again. So having a look here and comparing this with my first floor plan, I can see that my cable tray is actually fantastically fine. So I'm going to come across here and select my cable tray. Anytime we're measuring lengths or areas, we do need to have that scale set in place. And if we don't, it does give us a lovely reminder. I've actually got my snap to objects tool turned on. I find that this is a lot easier and quicker for me when I'm measuring lengths or areas because it does just snap to the lines for me, which when you've got the spotlight on, actually just makes it that little bit easier and quicker. Just double click to finish. Okay, so once I'm happy that I no longer need to check anything else on the compared plans, I'd come up to comparing and just cancel that compare. When you are marking up on plans that are being compared, so this might be that you're a plumber and you need to see what the ground floor and first floor plumbing layouts are for where you're going to pop things like your stacked risers in, or if you're maybe comparing an electrical layout to your air conditioning layout or anything else like that that you might need, it is only the current plan that you're on that you're going to be marking up. If we use the navigation arrows again, you'll see here is my first floor plan and you'll see there's no markups on here. If anyone is interested in any further information about how to quickly do takeoffs or how to get the best out of our design features in Groundplan, do please have a check out of our super user webinars again, number 2 and 3, depending on your requirements. So once I've finished marking up all of my plans, the next step I would take is to head up to my worksheet. First of all, on our worksheet, we have an options menu. So under options, we can show totals by plan. And you can see here for my 2E, there's 4 of these that I've counted, 2 of them on the ground floor and 2 of them on the first floor. Now you can print this page to a PDF, add this as an attachment in your SimPRO quote. This I find is information that a lot of tradies or a lot of customers are asking for, and this is just an easy way for you to display that to them. Also within our worksheet, what we're next going to do is we're next going to be adding all additional parts and labor for our quote into our project in here. Now, anybody that does revisions, this is a really important step for you because by adding it here in Groundplan, it means when you do quote revisions, you don't have to re-enter the information into SimPRO, which therefore means you're reducing workload and obviously the chance of any human error that you might get when re-entering data. Also under our options, we've got show build totals. So this will show me all of the items that I'm counting and measuring here against each measurement. So if we go down to our power and comms again, you can see obviously under my GPI, we've obviously got the roughing and the fit off prebuilds. So very similar to my WAP, these are all being counted at the same time. Use the back top option. If we now look at lighting, you see for my 1R, I've just got my light fitting in there. Whereas down under my 1S, I've also got an installation pre-build as well as my light fitting. So that obviously lets me know I need to then add this same installation here for my 1R. So I'm just going to click on the measurement name to go into my parts and labor page. So to add this pre-build, I'm going to go to plus part and then select my SimPRO Prebuild. Click that again, just go to the group of Cazz, and I'm just going to be looking for my install pre-build. Okay, and you'll see here, this is just a light fitting, so this is the pre-build that I'm going to need. Now, having looked at my plans and knowing what's in my pre-build, so this is like extra labor and extra cable and things like that, I know that for this particular light fitting, I actually want to allow for 2 of these pre-builds per light counted. So I can easily do this in Groundplan by coming into my formula bar and just doing count times 2. So what we can see here is my one-off item. I've counted 26 of these 1R fittings, and down here I have allowed 52 of my install light fittings based on that formula that I've created. Now, if I didn't have labor against my pre-build, or I didn't have fit time against my catalog items, or if I just wanted to add additional labor per light fitting, I can also do this within this page. So I can come up here and press plus labor. I'm just going to put lighting. And when I'm working out my formula here, I'm just going to say that I want to say put an extra 15 minutes per light fitting. So I just do times 0.25. Okay, and that's then giving me the total number of extra labor hours that I'm going to be pushing through to SimPRO. Once I'm happy with all of my parts and labour, I'm going to be heading back to my worksheet. If anyone else does actually have any formula requirements, so say you buy a pipe in 6 metre lengths, and when you're pushing your quote into SimPRO, you want to see the number of lengths of pipe rather than the number of meters measured, I would suggest that you jump onto our super user series and have a look at webinar number 4. That's on our worksheet and quantities. In that, we do cover common formula and what all of our supported references are. So heading back to my worksheet, if I now go onto options and show build totals, here we are. I've now got a lovely pre-build and extra labor in this 1R. Now I can see that my 1R and my 1S have the same installation pre-build against them. Obviously, what we can see here is that in my 1R and in my 1S, we do have the same installation light fitting. So under my 1R, obviously we've got 52 here, and under my 1S, we've got a combination of 6. So these are going to be one line item when we push this through to SimPRO, and it's going to have a combined total of both of those items. Now, anyone that stacks takeoff templates onto the same stage, so say that you had 2 different takeoff templates, if I had set these up that this was in one template and was assigned to the cost center of lighting, and this was in another template but with the cost center of commercial, if I was to put both of these templates onto the same stage, these 2 items would still be grouped together with one total. But the cost center they would push to would be the first cost center added, depending on the order the templates were then added to this stage. So if anyone is using multiple cost centers against different templates and will perhaps stack them on the same stage, do please contact us via help and send us a message to book your free training, and we will go through your workflow there and how to get the best out of Groundplan in using that new feature. So as I come down here, I do actually want to remove my first floor lighting stage. I obviously put it in here just to show you guys what this would look like, but it's not something that I want to push through to my SimPRO project. Now I'm going to delete this stage. But I would like to say, please be very careful when you're deleting anything inside your Groundplan project. So be this a stage or be this a plan, once we delete these items, they are completely deleted. And in the case of a plan, it's the plan that's deleted, the stages and any measurements associated to that plan, so any counts or lengths or areas on that plan are all deleted. And it doesn't matter how much we like you, I cannot get that information back, guys. Okay, so do just be really careful when you're deleting in projects. As I said, for this webinar, I don't want to bring this through as a stage in SimPRO, so I am going to go through and delete this stage. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to start adding in additional items that I want to have in my quote in SimPRO. So these are items that I don't need to measure in my plan. They're not part of my measurements, but they are items that I want showing up in my quote. So common ones I see are things like excavation hire, or if you're a roofer, do you need to allow for additional tarps that you're going to be charging on to the customer? Even sundry items. So for my stage of lighting, I want to add some sundry items here. So I'm going to plus additional item. I can select if this is a one-off item, a catalog item, or a pre-build that I want to add in here. I'm going to go for a pre-build because I know that I do have a sundries pre-build set up. Just going to have a search here for sundries and select this pre-build. So I know that I've set up a flat rate pre-build for a sell of $1 for all my sundries, and I want to add an allowance of $500 for sundries. So I'm just going to pop a quantity of 500 in there. And if you need to, you can add as many additional items in here as you want to. The whole idea is that if it's going to appear in this section of your quote, please make sure you're adding it here in Groundplan. As well as additional items, I can also add additional labour. So by pressing the green plus additional labour button, the labour description here is going to be my Groundplan description. So look, this could be contingency labour, apprentice labour, or in my case, I'm going to be adding in contractor labour. And I'm just going to add in a quantity of 15 hours. The reason that I say this is your Groundplan description is that before we push your labour into SimPRO, we are going to be assigning one of your SimPRO labour rates to this labour time. Now, if you have special customer labour pricing, so say you have one builder that he puts so much work through for you, you only charge him $90 an hour for labour, even if it is contract labour. For everyone else, you maybe charge $120 an hour for. If you leave your unit costs and unit price blank here, it will pick up your special customer pricing. So when you're pushing these labour hours into your SimPRO quote, if you have special customer pricing against any labour rate, always make sure you leave these boxes blank. Because as soon as you fill in these boxes, so let's say I go for 75 And let's just say I'm going to sell this for 150. This is going to override. I still have to assign a SimPRO labor rate because that's the only way we can push labor into SimPRO. But this is going to override my unit cost, my markup, and my unit price for that SimPRO labor rate, regardless of whether I have special customer pricing or not. So when I'm happy with this, I'm just going to click the blue Create button. Obviously, I'd now go through and add all of my extra items and labor into all of my sections. When I'd done all that, I would use the Back to Top button, and then I'm going to navigate through to my SimPRO page. So you'll see here we've got our default cost center. I can also set a default labor rate for this project. So let's just go with contract to hire. Now what we can see here, if I just go and jump to my power and comm stage again, you'll see that my WAP here is set to the default cost center because it's been added into the project, whereas all these cost centers that we set earlier in the piece, these are now all showing up fantastically for us. So to update these cost centers, I just click in here and just update these two quickly. Now up here, I might want to change all of my lighting to lighting rather than to commercial. So I can come here and I can select all. Now, I could actually do this across different stages as well, but all these items are selected, and even though I've had to tick select all in different areas, I can still come up here and set the cost center here to lighting across all of it. If I wanted to change one of these labor rates, so let's just change our contract to the one that we pre-filled. Let's just set this labor rate to Cazz's labor rate. Okay, so I've just selected that and then set my labor rate too. Once you're happy with all your labor rates and all your cost centers, our next step is to push this to a new quote in SimPRO. So when I'm pushing to a new quote, I can either search for an existing customer or I can add a new customer. I can also select the sites that I want to be having this quote for. Now we have done this webinar based on a project quote workflow. So if anybody regularly is using service quotes in SimPRO, this would change how you would be setting things like your stages up in Groundplan. So I would encourage you once again to go on to help and send us a message and to book in that free training session so we can go through your service quote workflow together. Additionally, down here, I can select my project manager and my salesperson. So this is for my reporting and for my notifications. When ready, I can then click my blue Create button. And here is now my quote number, and I can click on this to go straight into my quote in SimPRO. Now, for those of you obviously that are looking for a quicker workflow, everything's set up, all my pricing's in here, all my items are in here. I can just go straight onto my Forms tab, check my Form Builder form, see if I need to make any layout changes here. You see I've got my section name and my cost center name showing in here. So my rough in and my fit off and my outsources all come across. And then when I'm ready, obviously I'd go to finish and close, and I could just send my quote straight away. Now, other things that you may do inside your quote in SimPRO that are nice and quick and easy now that we've assigned all of our pre-builds and catalog items against things is we come into our project overview. We can jump to the bottom of the page, select all, or obviously select the sections that you want to do this for, and we can just create our supplier quote. Now, you will see here that my 1R and my 1S are missing because these were set up as one-off items that were not ticked as inventory. If I then head back into my cost center list, once again, we can see here are my sections created from stages, and here are my cost centers that I selected afterwards. If we head into lighting, you'll see here that here's my standard Cazz's labor rate. Okay, so this is obviously my default rate for this customer, and this is what I normally charge per hour. You see down here, this was the Cazz's labor rate that we assigned to that additional labor item where we overrid the cost price and the sell price. And you'll see that this is a completely different rate now because it has overridden my defaults within SimPRO. Now, when we're looking at your sections here in SimPRO, there may be occasions, I find it a lot when people have to build switchboards, or some people just want to also track their admin within the project. You may find that you need to add additional sections that you don't want to count and measure within Groundplan. So you could come up here, I'm just going to add a section here of admin, and obviously then you could go in there and do your usual workflow. So just add a cost center in here. Come in here and just add a couple of pre-builds. Obviously not looking too hard at what these pre-builds are, guys. They don't sound like they're very admin-y for what we're looking at. But you'll see here that, just to show you guys that I've got a section in here called admin with some additional costs against it that obviously would be in there in my quote. Now, there may be some of you that part of your standard project workflow is actually to head into the project overview. And under the adjustments page, you may well change your material markup. So I may come in here and go, okay, I want to change my material markup to, let's go 60% material markup. When I update my quote, obviously that's now been put across my quote. If this is your standard workflow, especially if you are doing revisions or you get any revisions through and you're pushing through from Groundplan, I would encourage you to go under Details, go into the Settings tab, and under Quote Setup, go across to your Optional tab, untick Use Default Material Markup, and just replace that with the new markup that you have decided on. I additionally tend to go under the activity timeline and just put in there as a note about the fact that I've changed it to a 60% material markup, just in case anyone wants to follow up with me about it. And so as soon as you go onto the quote, that is there nicely showing in the notes. So if I did get a revision, what I would do is I would head back into Groundplan, and under my Plans tab, I would actually add a group. So I'm going to add a group here called Revisions. I'm going to drag and drop my revision plans in. I'm going to use that review button again. This set of plans has come through as individual PDFs. I know that I only want that one there. So I'm just going to say, please don't bring these other ones into Groundplan. If I wanted to, I could save them as an attachment if I wanted them within my Groundplan project, and then press upload. Now, the next step that I'm going to take when my plan is uploaded is completely optional. It just happens to be the way that I prefer to do revisions, because I like to keep a copy of my revisions inside my project all time. So I would come over here onto my revised plan and click the copy button and just make a copy of that plan. Now this is the plan that I'm going to be revising. So hovering over this plan, I'm going to click the revise button, just close up that plans tab there, and I'm going to select the copy of the revision plan. Just make sure I'm happy with the way they're lined up with each other, and click revise plan. So what you'll see here is my copy of my revision has disappeared from the project. It's not technically disappeared, but what it has done is it's now replaced the background here on my electrical plans layout. So now I'm just going to click into this plan to see what changes and what updates have been made. So obviously by my markup, I can see a couple of really clear changes here, but I can also have Groundplan show me in lovely color detail what these changes are. So clicking on compare again, I'm going to click on my past revision. These will be lined up because I've done that when I'm revising my plan, and then I'm going to click to compare my plans. I'm just going to hide my stage so that I've just got a clear view of my plans. So once again, what we're looking at here is anything in blue is on my current plan, anything in red is on my previous revision but is not on my current plan, and anything in black is the same. You can see this under the comparing tab. So what we can see here is I've had a couple of 1Rs added. You'll see here that my cable here is in red. That's because you'll see that this is now being covered by my light fitting. So that, as it's no longer on my plan, that's why it's showing up in red for me. So coming in here, I'm just going to click. So I've got my 1Rs, need to add a couple more of them. Oh, click, hold and drag, just add in my extra 1Rs. And then I can click across to my 2E and add that one in as well. Once I was happy with all my additional markups, or I'd obviously removed anything that needs removing, add things that need adding. Once I'm happy with all that, I would then jump back into my worksheet page. If anyone does regularly do plan revisions and would like some more detailed information about plan revisions, our multi-select tool, and even our aligning and comparing with different plans, please do see our super user series. We've got webinar number 2 and webinar number 5, both handle revisions and plan compare. So back onto my worksheet tab, I'll just come in here and check to see if I need to add any additional parts and labor based on the revisions that I've just done. Also here under my 1R, I know this is a one-off item where I put a price in and I put a markup in. So I'd come in here, click on the formula to open this item. Now, if I'd been told, okay, so the cost of your item is now being confirmed, it's actually only $45, I'd come in here and update my cost in Groundplan, but I'd also come in here and update my markup. So you saw me change my material markup to 60%. I need to change this in Groundplan as well. Because this is a one-off item, it's actually going to be overriding the materials default markup because it's a markup at item level. Just so I can show you how this would now appear in my supply quote, I'm also going to tick this inventory item box and click the save button. Once I'm happy with everything on my worksheet, we're going to head back to the SimPRO tab. Just check we're happy with our cost centers, make any changes to our cost centers or labor rates as we need to. Once we're happy with all of that, we're then going to push to an existing quote. Now you'll see here at the moment that Groundplan's going to remove my admin section. That's because up here I've got an option to remove existing sections from quotes. So anyone with the workflow where you have additional sections that you're not counting and measuring in Groundplan, please make sure you untick that box. You'll see here that we're going to overwrite the sections. So if you do have additional sections in there, just make sure they're not named the same as your ground plan sections, or they will also get overridden. So once I'm happy with all of this, I can just, I also need to make sure that my quote, I press save and finish on my quote, because if my quote's open, it won't let me push revisions through, because as we know, when you open a quote in SimPRO, it's in read-only mode. So when we're happy that all of that's correct, we'll go down here and click Update Quote. Now it's just going to update for us. And then up here, I can open my quote in SimPRO. And then I'm just going to close my quote off here. Okay, so now that I'm back in my quote, if we go into my cost center list and go into lighting, you can see that my 1R totals have changed. Even things like my install fitting has changed. And that's now obviously all correct. If we head back into our project overview and go to the bottom of this page now, let's just go and create that supply quote again. So we can see here that my 1R is now showing on my supply quote as it was ticked as an inventory item when we created the one-off item. So back on Groundplan, the last thing that I want to do here inside my project is I actually want to use these stages again on other projects. Okay, so I've done the work, I've created my stage and I've created my measurements, set up all of my styling options, set up my cost centers correctly under here. So I now want to save these to use again. So what I'll do is I'll come over here to actions and I'm just going to copy to a new template. I would then name my new template as required. Here you'll see all my measurements with their style options on them. And then under here for SimPRO, you'll see it's picked up my company from my multi-company. And because these cost centers are different to my default cost center, it's now populated my cost centers. So next time that I obviously use that template onto a project, it's going to remember those cost centers. If at any point you wanted to say, oh, actually, I want these all to be default cost center again, you just come into the template, select all, and then you could then change that cost center back to none. For any of the information we've gone through in today's webinar, I would encourage you to go up to help and go onto the user guide. Under our user guide, we do have a whole section on the SimPRO integration. So this includes things such as, setting up your API key. You'll see here that these articles have been updated, so they will include information about that new feature where you can assign your cost centers to your Takeoff Templates. Anyone interested in the super user series, so anyone that wanted to have a look through just how they may be able to get a bit more from their ground plan, you just need to head to groundplan.com. You scroll right down the bottom there on the right hand side, you'll see here's our blog. Once inside our blog, you can actually filter our blog by training. And here are all of our super user series. So obviously they are labeled what each of the webinars is on. And say you wanted to look at designing, you just click onto our design webinar and down there you could just press play. I'd like to thank you all for attending our Groundplan and SimPRO Integrations webinar. Every customer gets 1 hour's free of charge training. So if you haven't already had your free of charge training, please do head up to help and send us a message to ask to book in this free of charge training. Anyone who has had their free of charge training, we do offer additional training. It is $100 an hour. I'm told it's a tax write-off because it is training and upskilling your business, but it can definitely be beneficial to see where we can save you time in that workflow integration. Look, we are going to be posting a copy of this recording onto our blog and onto our social media. So please make sure, guys, that you are following us on our socials to see these postings of our webinars. Please let me know what you'd like to see in future webinars. And obviously, thank you guys all again for your time today. I very much appreciate it, and happy ground planning.